The stars burned cold in the emptiness of space. Among them, a broken ship drifted like a dying ember. Its hull was cracked, leaking atmosphere into the void. Inside, the last survivors of an ancient race huddled together, their crystalline bodies dimming with each passing hour. Elder Shivora stood at the center of the refugee chamber. Her body, once brilliant with inner light, now flickered weakly. Around her, 300 Valeth whispered in colors and vibrations that humans could never hear. They spoke of fear. They spoke of the end. The Valeth had been part of the Galactic Concordat for 2,000 years. They had shared their knowledge freely, helped build the great stations that connected the galaxy, and offered friendship to all who asked. But when the Catharn Dominion came with their warships and their hunger for conquest, everything changed. The Catharn wanted the Valeth worlds, rich in rare crystals and positioned along crucial trade routes. Those worlds represented power. The Catharn took them one by one, crushing any resistance. They destroyed cities that had stood for millennia. They shattered the great light gardens where Valeth children learned to sing in colors. Shivora had pleaded before the Galactic Council. She had shown them images of the destruction, had shared the cries of her dying people. The council members had looked away. Some had seemed uncomfortable. Most had seemed bored. "We cannot intervene," the council leader had said. "The Catharn control resources we need. A war would damage trade. Your people must find their own solution." Translation: "You are not worth the cost." So the Valeth ran, ships full of refugees scattered across the galaxy seeking shelter. But every world they approached turned them away. The Concordat had made its position clear, and no one wanted to anger the Catharn by harboring their prey. This colony ship carried the last survivors from the northern territories. They had been traveling for 3 months, their supplies nearly gone. The ship's engines had failed 2 weeks ago. Now they drifted in neutral space, sending out distress signals that no one answered. Shivora felt her light fading. Soon she would go dark. Soon all of them would. Perhaps it was better this way. At least they would die free, not in Catharn slave camps. A young Valeth named Kriva approached her, pulsing with desperate hope. "Elder, a ship approaches." "It's responding to our beacon." Shivora's light dimmed further. "Catharn?" "No, Elder. The signature is strange. I've never seen this configuration before." In the vast dark, a shape emerged from faster-than-light travel. The ship was smaller than a Catharn dreadnought, but moved with purpose. Its hull bore markings in a language Shivora didn't recognize. Below the symbols, painted in bold white letters, was a name: Defiant Dawn. Inside the human ship, Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge, studying the Valeth vessel on her screens. She was a woman of 45 years, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that had seen too much suffering. Around her, her crew worked their stations with practiced efficiency.
"Life signs?"
she asked. "Faint but present," her science officer reported. "Approximately 300 individuals. Their biology reads as crystalline-based carbon-silicon hybrid. I've never seen anything like it, Captain. Hull integrity. Critical. They've got maybe 6 hours of atmosphere left, possibly less." Vasquez made her decision in seconds. "Prepare docking procedures. Medical teams to Bay 3, and someone find out who these people are and why they're dying out here." Her first officer, Commander Okoye, stepped closer. "Captain, we're scheduled to rendezvous with the supply convoy in 4 hours. If we deviate, then we deviate," Vasquez said. "Since when do humans ignore distress calls?" Okoye nodded, a slight smile crossing his face. "Since never, Captain. I'll inform the convoy." As the Defiant Dawn maneuvered alongside the dying Valeth ship, the communications officer raised her hand. "Captain, I'm receiving a message from the Concordat Central Command. They're ordering us to maintain course and ignore the distress beacon. They say the refugees are politically complicated." Vasquez felt something cold settle in her chest. "They want us to leave them to die?" "The order is quite explicit, ma'am." For a long moment, the bridge was silent. Every eye turned to the captain. Vasquez thought about her orders, about her career, about the chain of command she'd followed for 23 years. Then she thought about the 300 people dying in that ship, people who had done nothing wrong except lose a war. "Log my response," she said quietly. "Message reads Defiant Dawn responding to distress call as per United Earth Coalition emergency protocols. We don't leave people to die in space. Vasquez out." She turned to her crew. "Dock us now." The docking procedure took 15 precious minutes. When the airlocks finally connected, Vasquez herself led the boarding team. She had to see these refugees with her own eyes. The Valith ship was cold and dark. Emergency lighting cast long shadows. As Vasquez's team moved through the corridors, they found the refugees huddled in what appeared to be a central chamber. Vasquez had seen many alien species in her career, but the Valith took her breath away. They were roughly humanoid in shape, but made entirely of crystal that refracted light into rainbows. Each one glowed from within, though dimly now, like dying stars. The elder approached slowly. Shavora looked at this human woman in her military uniform and felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Through translators, Shavora's voice emerged, musical and ancient. "You," answered our call. "Why?" The Concordate said no one would come. Vasquez met the elder's eyes and spoke words that would echo across the galaxy. "We heard your call. Humanity answers, always." She extended her hand. After a moment's hesitation, Shavora reached out. Crystal touched flesh and a connection was made that would change everything. The Concordate Central Station hung in space like a massive wheel, kilometers across. Ships from 47 different species docked at its spokes. In its council chamber, decisions were made that affected trillions of lives across hundreds of worlds. Ambassador Liu Chen walked those gleaming corridors with steady steps, though his heart pounded. He was 58, gray-haired and dignified, but right now he felt like a young man about to pick a fight he couldn't win. Behind him, Elder Shavora moved silently, her crystalline form drawing stares from every passing alien. 2 weeks had passed since the Defiant Dawn rescued the Valith refugees. Those 2 weeks had been a storm of activity. Earth's government had debated, argued, and finally made a decision that many called foolish. Now Liu was here to announce that decision to the galaxy. The council chamber was a vast circular room. Representatives from all 47 species sat in tiered seats rising up like an amphitheater. At the center stood a speaking platform where Liu now waited. Above him, holographic displays showed his face to every corner of the galaxy. The council leader, a tall insectoid being called Zixthar, clicked his mandibles impatiently. "Ambassador Liu, you requested this emergency session. The council is listening." Liu took a breath and began. 2 weeks ago, a human ship encountered Valith refugees in neutral space. They were dying. We saved them. "Without authorization," Zixthar interrupted. "You violated Concordate neutrality protocols." "We saved dying people," Liu repeated firmly. 300 lives that would have ended in the cold dark. And in doing so, we learned something troubling. He gestured, and holographic images appeared above the platform. Destroyed cities, burning worlds, bodies crystallized and shattered. The Catharn Dominion has killed 12 billion Valith in the past 18 months. 12 billion, and this council, this galactic concordate that claims to represent civilization itself, has done nothing. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some representatives looked uncomfortable. Others looked angry. A delegate from the Sorval Unity stood. "The Catharn situation is complex. They control 70% of the trilithium mines in the eastern sectors. Our economies depend on those resources. Intervention would be costly. So you let an entire species die for economics?" Liu's voice was sharp. "Is that what the Concordate has become?" The Catharn ambassador rose from his seat. He was massive, scaled like a reptile but walking upright, with 4 arms and eyes that burned with cold intelligence. "The Valith worlds belonged to the Catharn in ancient times. We merely reclaimed what was ours. Their resistance forced us to use harsh measures." His gaze fixed on Liu. "And humanity should be careful about involving itself in matters beyond its understanding. You are a young species, new to the Concordate. You don't know how things work. Then let me learn," Liu said. He turned to address the entire council. "I've spent the past 2 weeks researching Concordate history. Do you know what I found? 150 years ago, Earth faced extinction. An asteroid swarm, knocked loose by a rogue planet, was heading straight for our homeworld. We had the technology to detect it, but not to stop it. 6 billion people were going to die." The chamber quieted. Few species paid attention to human history. They were listening now. "We sent out desperate pleas for help," Liu continued. "Every species we could contact. 43 of you ignored us. 2 sent messages of sympathy but no aid. 1 species offered to buy Earth's art treasures before we died, to preserve them." His voice hardened. "And 1 species came. The Valith." Shavora's light brightened slightly at the memory. They shared their gravitational manipulation technology, Liu said. Technology they'd developed over thousands of years. They taught us how to build the gravity tethers that pulled those asteroids into safe orbits. 6 billion humans are alive today because the Valeth helped us when no one else would. He let that sink in, watching faces throughout the chamber. So when people ask why humanity is involving itself, why we're risking our position in the Concordat for a lost cause, the answer is simple. We don't forget our friends. The Catharn ambassador's scales rippled with anger. Your sentimentality is noted. But sentiment doesn't win wars. If humanity harbors Valeth refugees, you make yourselves our enemy. Are you prepared for that consequence? Lim met his gaze steadily. I am authorized by the United Earth Coalition to make the following announcement. As of today, humanity formally offers sanctuary to all Valeth refugees. Any who can reach Earth or our colony worlds will be welcomed and protected. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The Catharn ambassador's eyes widened. Furthermore, Liu continued, his voice rising, we pledge military support to defend the remaining Valeth colony worlds in the Corvan Nebula. We will not stand by while genocide continues. You're declaring war on the Catharn Dominion? Zixthar stood, his insectoid body trembling. Are you insane? Your fleet has 34 combat-capable ships. The Catharn command 200 dreadnoughts and 4 times that many support vessels. You'll be destroyed. Possibly, Liu admitted. But we'll do it standing up for what's right. Can the rest of you say the same? The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted at each other in dozens of languages. Some called Liu a fool. Others looked thoughtful, even ashamed. The Catharn ambassador was speaking urgently into a communicator, no doubt reporting to his superiors. Liu stood calm in the center of the storm. Beside him, Shavora pulsed with colors that the translator interpreted as words. You didn't have to do this. Your people will suffer. Maybe, Liu said quietly. But my grandmother used to say that you can judge a person by who they stand beside in the dark times. I think the same is true for species. He smiled at her. Besides, you saved us once. Time to return the favor. Over the following hours, the council devolved into chaos. The Catharn formally declared humanity a hostile power. 3 species announced they were cutting diplomatic ties with Earth, afraid of Catharn retaliation. But something else happened too. Something unexpected. A delegate from the Threnody Collective, amphibious beings known for their engineering skills, approached Liu quietly as the session ended. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen, the Threnody said. Probably both. He hesitated. We cannot publicly support you, but if certain repair drones and spare parts were to go missing from our supply depots near human space, well, we have trouble with theft sometimes. Liu understood. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just try not to get completely destroyed out there. Some of us are watching, and some of us remember when we needed help too. As Liu and Shavora left the station, heading back to the transport that would take them to Earth, Liu wondered if humanity had just made the greatest mistake in its history. Or the finest hour, only time would tell. But across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, people had watched the human ambassador stand before the council and choose honor over safety. That image would not be forgotten. The Corvan Nebula burned with colors no human eye had ever seen. Purple and gold gases swirled in massive storms, lit from within by young stars. It was beautiful. It was also about to become a battlefield. Captain Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Defiant Dawn, watching the nebula fill her view screen. Around her ship, 33 other human vessels held formation. Destroyers, frigates, and 2 heavy cruisers. Every combat-capable ship Earth could spare. It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. Enemy contact, her tactical officer announced. Multiple signatures emerging from the nebula's core. I count. 187 Catharn warships. More appearing every second. Vasquez felt her stomach tighten. 200 ships against 34. But she kept her voice steady. Red alert. All ships to battle stations. Inform Admiral Zhang we have visual confirmation. In the fleet's flagship, Admiral Zhang reviewed the tactical display with cold eyes. He was 70 years old, had fought in the Mars Independence War, and had never lost a battle. Today might be the first time. They outnumber us 6-1, his second-in-command said quietly. I can count, Zhang replied. But numbers aren't everything. This nebula is full of magnetic storms and plasma clouds. Visibility is terrible. Sensors are scrambled. In conditions like this, it's not about who has more ships. It's about who fights smarter. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Zhang, I won't lie to you. We're facing impossible odds. The galaxy is watching, waiting for us to fail, waiting to say humanity was foolish for standing up to the Catharn. He paused. So let's show them what foolish humans can do. Make every shot count. Fight smart, fight dirty, and fight hard. Zhang out. On the defiant dawn, Vasquez turned to her crew. She saw fear in their eyes, but also determination. In the engineering section, a young ensign was clutching a photo of his family. In medical, doctors prepared for casualties they all knew were coming. But there were others aboard too. 20 Valith refugees, including Elder Shivora, had volunteered for the battle. They stood in the ship's computer core, their crystalline hands interfaced directly with the systems. "Captain," Shivora's translated voice came through the comm. "We are ready. The Valith can process data faster than your computers. We can see patterns, predict enemy movements. Let us help you fight." "Welcome to the crew, Elder," Vasquez said. "Give us everything you've got." The Catharn fleet advanced like a wall of steel. Their commander, Warlord Krath, watched the human ships with amusement. 34 vessels against my armada. Did they come here to die or to surrender? "They're moving into defensive formation around the colony worlds," his tactical officer reported. "Irrelevant. Destroy them. Show the galaxy what happens to those who defy the Catharn dominion." The first wave of Catharn ships opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space, bright enough to burn after images into human retinas. The human fleet scattered, diving into the nebula's clouds. "They're running." Krath laughed. "Chase them down." But the humans weren't running. They were adapting. In the purple clouds of the nebula, visibility dropped to nearly zero. Catharn sensors, designed for clear space combat, struggled to track their prey, but the Valith's crystalline forms could detect vibrations in the charged gas clouds. They whispered to the human crews, telling them where every enemy ship moved. "Target to port 3,000 kilometers," Shivora's voice guided. 2 dreadnoughts moving in formation. Vasquez nodded to her weapons officer. "Fire." Missiles streaked through the purple fog. The Catharn never saw them coming until they slammed into hull plating, tearing through shields weakened by the nebula's magnetic interference. Across the battlefield, the pattern repeated. Human ships would appear from the clouds, strike hard, and vanish again before the Catharn could respond. It was guerrilla warfare on a cosmic scale. "They're using the nebula against us," the Catharn tactical officer reported. "Our sensors can't lock on. We've lost contact with 8 ships," Krath snarled. "Then flush them out. Fire plasma torpedoes into the clouds. Burn away their hiding places." The Catharn launched hundreds of torpedoes into the nebula. Massive explosions lit up the gas clouds. Several human ships were caught in the blasts, their shields failing, hulls cracking. The destroyer Terra's Hammer broke apart, its crew of 300 lost in an instant. "Terra's Hammer is gone," the communications officer reported, her voice shaking. Vasquez closed her eyes for 1 second, mourning. Then she opened them again. "Mark their position. We'll remember them. Now find me another target." Admiral Zhang saw the battle developing and made a decision that would be studied in military academies for centuries. "All ships form up on my position. We're going to make them pay for clustering their fleet." The human vessels emerged from the nebula clouds, racing toward a specific coordinate. The Catharn saw them coming and began to converge, ready to crush the smaller fleet in a single decisive battle. "Now!" Zhang commanded. The human ships had been quietly deploying thousands of autonomous drones throughout the battle, disguised among the nebula debris. Now those drones activated, forming a massive electromagnetic web between the approaching fleets. "What is that?" Krath demanded. His answer came in fire. The Valith technology that had once saved Earth from asteroids could manipulate gravity. Modified and weaponized, it could create a gravity well, a funnel in space itself. Combined with the drone's electromagnetic field, it created a corridor that pulled the Catharn ships helplessly forward. Right into the heart of a plasma storm. The storm had been building in the nebula for weeks, a natural phenomenon of incredible power. Now the gravity well directed 40 Catharn ships straight into its center. The plasma burned at temperatures hot enough to melt steel in seconds. Shields overloaded, hulls vaporized, 40 dreadnoughts died screaming. Krath stared at his tactical display in disbelief. He had just lost nearly a quarter of his fleet to one insane human trick. "Pull back!" he ordered. Reform outside the nebula. We regroup and reassess. But the humans weren't done. As the Catharn fleet retreated in disorder, human ships harried them every step of the way. Small, fast frigates darted in and out, firing missiles at engines and weapon systems. The Defiant Dawn led a squadron that destroyed 5 more enemy vessels before they could escape. When the first day of battle ended, both fleets withdrew to lick their wounds. The Catharn had lost 52 ships and thousands of soldiers. The humans had lost 12 vessels, including 2 cruisers. 4,000 humans were dead, but the Valith colony world still stood. In the Defiant Dawn's medical bay, doctors worked frantically to save the wounded. In the mess hall, exhausted crew members ate in silence, too tired even to talk. On the bridge, Vasquez stared at the casualty reports, feeling the weight of every name. Elder Shivora approached her quietly. "You've sacrificed so much for my people. How can we ever repay this debt?" Vasquez looked at the ancient alien. "You already did. You saved our world once. Now we save yours. That's what friends do." She managed a tired smile. "Besides, we're not done yet. They'll be back, and next time they'll be ready for our tricks." "Then we'll need new tricks," Shivora said, her light pulsing with determination. "Exactly." Vasquez stood, rolling her shoulders. "Let's get to work." News of the battle spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, people watched the recordings in disbelief. The humans had fought the Catharn Dominion and survived. More than survived, they had won the first engagement. In the underwater cities of Threnod Prime, the amphibious engineers gathered in their council chambers. The images played on massive screens, human ships dancing through the nebula, using tactics no one had expected, fighting with a courage that seemed insane. "They're actually doing it," Speaker Velmora said quietly. "Those crazy humans are actually standing their ground." "And dying for it," another council member added. 4,000 casualties in one day. How long can they sustain losses like that? Velmora's gills fluttered thoughtfully. "That's not the question. The question is, can we continue to do nothing while they fight alone?" She paused. "Remember 30 years ago? The Plague of Shadows? The Catharn had the cure and refused to share it unless we gave them mining rights on our moon. 5 million Threnodi died before we surrendered to their demands." The chamber grew silent. Every Threnodi remembered that shame. "I propose we send more than repair drones this time," Velmora said. "I propose we send engineers, weapons, medical supplies. Everything we can spare. Secretly, of course. But we send it." The vote was unanimous. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening. On the hive worlds of Quella, in the frozen cities of Corvin, in the desert communes of Saresh. Species that had suffered under Catharn intimidation watched humanity fight and felt something they hadn't felt in years. Hope. The Galactic Concordate's emergency session was chaos. Delegates shouted at each other in a dozen languages. Some demanded humanity be sanctioned for starting a war. Others argued that the Catharn's genocide justified intervention. Ambassador Liu stood at the center of it all, exhausted but unbowed. He had been fighting political battles for weeks while his people fought real ones in space. The Catharn ambassador slammed his 4 fists on his podium. "The Concordate must condemn humanity's aggression. They have violated neutrality agreements. They have attacked Catharn vessels without provocation. They must be punished." "Attacked without provocation?" Liu's laugh was bitter. "You were exterminating an entire species. We stopped you from committing genocide. If that's aggression, then I'm proud to be aggressive." Before the Catharn could respond, something unexpected happened. The delegate from Quella stood, her insectoid mandibles clicking rapidly. "I wish to speak." The chamber quieted. The Quellan hives rarely spoke in council sessions. They were known for staying neutral, for avoiding conflict. "For 17 years, the Quellan delegate said, the Catharn have demanded tribute from my people. Food, resources, technology. Always with the threat of war if we refused. We paid every time because we had no choice, no allies, no one to stand with us." Her compound eyes swept the chamber. "Now I watch humans die defending a species that isn't even their own. And I ask myself, what does it say about us that we let them fight alone?" Another voice joined in from the Threnodi section. "The humans saved my people from asteroids once, just as they saved the Valith. We owe them a debt. But more than that, they're showing us what civilization should mean, not trade agreements and resource sharing. Those are economics. Civilization means standing up for each other when it matters, Fine words, the Catharn ambassador sneered. But words don't win wars. We have already deployed our reserve fleets. In 72 hours we will crush the human forces once and for all. And then we will remind the galaxy what happens to those who defy us. Liu felt ice in his veins. What do you mean, reserve fleets? The Catharn's smile was cruel. Did you think the 200 ships were all we had? Foolish humans. We have been preparing a special weapon for the Valith's final world, Lumsara. In 3 days we deploy it. The planet will be destroyed along with the 3 million Valith still living there, and your fleet will be unable to stop it. The chamber erupted again. Liu's hands shook as he activated his emergency communicator. He had to warn Admiral Zhang. In the Corvan Nebula, the human fleet was barely holding together. The past 2 weeks had been a nightmare of constant skirmishes. The Catharn would probe their defenses, testing for weaknesses. The humans would fight them off. But each battle cost them ships they couldn't replace and crew they couldn't afford to lose. Only 22 human vessels remained combat-ready. Ammunition was running low. Medical supplies were nearly exhausted. The crews were surviving on 4 hours of sleep a day. But they hadn't lost a single Valith world. When Liu's message arrived, Admiral Zhang read it 3 times, hoping he had misunderstood. A planet-killer weapon? 72 hours. He called an emergency meeting of all ship captains. The holographic conference room aboard the flagship filled with tired faces. These men and women had aged years in the past weeks. Some showed bandages from injuries. All showed the weight of command under impossible circumstances. They're bringing a planet killer to Lumsara, Zhang said without preamble. In 3 days, 3 million Valith will die unless we stop it. Captain Vasquez leaned forward in her hologram. What kind of weapon? Intelligence suggests it's a gravity implosion device. It collapses a planet's core, destroying it from the inside. Once activated, it's unstoppable. But it has to be deployed from a command station in orbit around the target world. So we destroy the station before they can deploy it, another captain said. The station is protected by 80 fresh Catharn warships, Zhang replied. And our fleet is down to 22 operational vessels. We're outnumbered 4 to 1, our people are exhausted, and we're nearly out of ammunition. Silence filled the conference room. Everyone understood what Zhang wasn't saying. This was a suicide mission. Earth is sending reinforcements, Zhang continued. But they won't arrive for another 3 weeks. We're on our own. Then we go anyway, Vasquez said quietly. What choice do we have? We came here to save the Valith. If we retreat now, we condemn 3 million people to death. Everything we've fought for, everyone we've lost, it all means nothing if we quit now. Elena's right, another captain agreed. We knew it was a one-way trip when we volunteered. At least let's make it count. One by one, the other captains nodded. Zhang felt pride swell in his chest. These were his people. Stubborn, foolish, brave humanity at its finest. Then we have 72 hours to plan the impossible, he said. Let's get to work. Aboard the Defiant Dawn, Elder Shivora found Captain Vasquez in her quarters, staring at photos of the crew they had lost. The Valith Elder's light pulsed with sadness. You're planning to attack that station, aren't you? Shivora asked. We are. You'll die. All of you. My people aren't worth this sacrifice. Vasquez turned to face her. That's not your decision to make, Elder, it's ours. And we've made it. She picked up one of the photos showing a young ensign who had died in the first battle. This kid was 22 years old. He died defending your people. You think I'm going to let his sacrifice be for nothing? You think any of us will? Why? Shivora's voice was anguished. Why would your species do this? We're nothing to you. We're just aliens you barely know. You saved our world, Vasquez said simply. You gave us the technology to survive when everyone else turned away. Maybe that's enough. Or maybe, she paused, searching for words. Maybe humans are just too stupid to know when to quit. Maybe we don't know how to walk away from people who need help. Whatever the reason, we're seeing this through. Through the viewport, the nebula swirled with color. Somewhere in that vast cloud, the Catharn were preparing their final blow. And somewhere in the dark, 22 human ships were preparing to do the impossible. The clock was ticking. The attack began at dawn, though in space there was no such thing. Admiral Zhang simply chose the moment when the Catharn would least expect it, during their shift change, when crews were tired and attention wandered. 22 human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly into Catharn formation. Every weapon fired at once. The first 3 Catharn vessels exploded before they knew they were under attack. "All ships, execute pattern Omega," Zhang commanded. "Make every shot count!" The human fleet split into 3 groups, each diving in different directions. The Catharn scrambled to respond, their formation breaking apart as they tried to track multiple threats at once. But even surprise couldn't overcome the numbers. 80 Catharn warships began to swarm the human vessels. Energy beams lanced through space. Missiles filled the void like deadly stars. The destroyer Beijing's Pride took 3 direct hits. Its shields collapsed. Atmosphere vented from a dozen hull breaches. But even as it died, its crew kept firing, destroying 2 more Catharn ships before the Beijing exploded in a ball of fire. "Beijing is gone," the communications officer reported, voice cracking. "Mark it," Zhang said. "Keep fighting." Then something happened that no one expected. New contacts appeared on the sensors. Ships dropping out of faster than light, emerging from the nebula clouds. 15 vessels with unfamiliar signatures. "Identify those ships," Zhang demanded. "Sir, I'm reading Threnody designs. And Quellen. And Corvani. They're not concorded official vessels. They look like volunteers. Private ships." One of the new arrivals opened a channel. The voice was translated from amphibious sounds. "Human fleet. This is Captain Velketh of the Threnody ship Rolling Tide. My crew and I got tired of sitting at home while you did all the fighting. Hope you don't mind some company." Zhang felt something hot behind his eyes. Backup allies. They weren't alone anymore. "Welcome to the party, Captain," he managed. "Target the ships protecting that station. We need a path through." "Understood. All ships follow the humans. Let's show the Catharn what happens when they push people too far." The battle intensified. The allied ships, humans, Threnody, Quellen, and Corvani, fought with desperate courage against overwhelming odds. Ships burned and died on both sides. But slowly, meter by meter, they fought their way toward the Catharn command station. Aboard the Defiant Dawn, Captain Vasquez led her ship through a storm of fire. Her shields were failing. Hull plating was melted in a dozen places. But the station was in sight now, a massive structure orbiting the Valith world of Lumsara. "Elder Shavora," Vasquez called to the computer core. "Can you detect the weapon?" "Yes, Captain. It's in the station's central chamber. But the shielding is too strong. We'd need to get inside to destroy it." "Then that's what we'll do. Prepare boarding teams." "Captain," her first officer protested. "That's a suicide mission." "I know. I'm leading it." Vasquez stood, straightening her uniform. "You have the bridge, Commander. If we don't make it back, ram this ship into that station. Don't let them deploy that weapon." The Defiant Dawn's armored boarding pod launched like a bullet, carrying 20 human Marines and 5 Valith volunteers. It crashed through the station's hull, tearing open a wound in the metal skin. Vasquez led her team through dark corridors. Catharn soldiers rushed to meet them. The fighting was brutal. Close quarters combat with no mercy on either side. Vasquez's Marines used their smaller size to advantage, ducking under the Catharn's forearms, firing at weak points in their armor. The Valith proved deadly in ways the Catharn never expected. Their crystalline bodies could refract energy weapons, turning enemy fire back on its source. Elder Shavora moved through the corridors like living light, her very presence disorienting to the Catharn soldiers. They reached the central chamber. The planet-killer weapon dominated the space, a massive sphere of dark metal covered in energy conduits. Catharn technicians fled at their approach. "How do we destroy it?" Vasquez asked, gasping for breath. Half her team was dead or wounded. Shavora approached the weapon, her crystalline hands touching its surface. "This device works by creating a gravitational cascade. If I can absorb its energy matrix into my body, I can neutralize it, but what? The energy would destroy me. My molecular structure can't contain that much power. I would essentially become a bomb." "No," Vasquez said firmly. "We'll find another way." "There is no other way, Captain, and we're out of time." Alarms blared throughout the station. The Catharn were preparing to activate the weapon remotely. In minutes it would fire, and 3 million Valith would die. "Your species has given everything for mine," Shavora said gently. 4,000 humans dead, 22 ships destroyed. Your careers, your futures, all sacrificed for people you barely knew. Allow me to give something in return. Elder, please, tell my people I died proud. Tell them humanity showed us what true civilization looks like." Shavora's light burned brighter. "Now go, Captain, run." Vasquez wanted to argue. wanted to find another solution. But she knew there wasn't time. She saluted the ancient alien who had become her friend. "It's been an honor, Elder. The honor was mine. Now run!" Vasquez and her surviving Marines sprinted for the boarding pod. Behind them, Shivora placed her hands fully on the weapon. Her crystalline body began to glow, brighter and brighter as she absorbed the massive energies of the planet killer into herself. The boarding pod launched just as Shivora reached critical mass. Her body couldn't contain the energy anymore. She became a star burning with impossible brilliance. The Catharn station exploded, torn apart by the gravitational forces she had absorbed and released. Aboard the Defiant Dawn, Vasquez watched the explosion through tears. They had won. The weapon was destroyed. Lomsara was safe. But the cost? "Captain, the Catharn fleet is retreating," her tactical officer reported. They're surrendering. It's over." Across the galaxy, people watched the final battle. They saw the sacrifice. They saw humans and Valith and others die together, defending the helpless. And something changed in the hearts of millions. The Concordat Council met in emergency session. But this time things were different. 12 species formally withdrew from the Concordat, declaring it had failed its purpose. They formed a new alliance, calling it the Solidarity Pact. At its heart was a simple principle. Never again would they abandon those who needed help. 3 months later, a memorial was built on Earth. It was made from fragments of Elder Shivora's remains, crystalline shards that still glowed faintly with inner light. The inscription was simple. Here stood humanity when all others looked away. Here they proved that civilization is measured not by power or wealth, but by those you're willing to die beside. In memory of Elder Shivora and all who gave their lives so others might live. Captain Vasquez, now Admiral Vasquez, stood before the memorial with a young cadet. The kid couldn't have been more than 20, fresh-faced and eager. "Admiral," the cadet asked, "why did we do it? Why did humanity risk everything for aliens we barely knew? My instructors can't explain it." Vasquez looked at the glowing crystal, remembering Shivora's final words. "Because someone stood for us once when we needed it. Because sometimes the right thing and the smart thing aren't the same, and we'd rather be right." She smiled sadly. "Because that's what humanity does. We stand our ground, even when it's impossible, especially then." Vasquez placed her hand on the memorial. The crystal warmed under her touch. The galaxy learned something important in the Corvan Nebula. They learned that the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't the strongest predator or the largest fleet. It's someone who refuses to abandon their friends. The cadet nodded slowly, understanding dawning. Around them, other humans came and went, paying respects to the fallen. But there were aliens too. Valith refugees glowing softly, Threnodi engineers, Quellan workers, members of species who had learned what humanity had known all along. That civilization doesn't mean never fighting. It means knowing what's worth fighting for, and sometimes it means standing your ground when everyone else says to run. The memorial glowed in the sunlight, a beacon of crystalline fire, a reminder of sacrifice, a promise of solidarity, a testament to the stubborn, foolish, wonderful humans who looked at impossible odds and said, "We don't care. We stand by our friends, and the galaxy would never forget." The stars looked different from Europa. Captain Eric Donovan stood at the viewport of the USS Valiant, watching as the last civilian transport disappeared into the darkness of space. His hands trembled slightly as he turned away. Only 12. Hours ago, Europa Colony had been home to 15,000 people. Now it was a graveyard. "Captain, we need to go," said Lieutenant Sam Reed, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "Long-range scanners show they're coming back." Eric nodded and returned to the command chair. The bridge crew worked in silent efficiency, faces pale under the blue emergency lights. They had all seen what happened when the alien ships arrived. They had all watched the defense platforms, humanity's pride and most advanced weapons, shatter like glass. "Set course for Earth," Eric ordered. "Maximum speed, and prepare a full report for United Earth Command." As the Valiant broke orbit, Eric looked one last time at Europa Colony through the rear scanners. Dark ships were already descending on it again, sleek obsidian vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The crew had started calling them the Void. "Why are they going back?" whispered Communications Officer Lisa Frost. "There's nothing left. But Eric knew. He had seen the footage from the ground teams before they went silent. The aliens weren't just destroying the colonies. They were harvesting them. Dr. Allison Wright stared at the samples under her microscope, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. The laboratory deep beneath Geneva had been in chaos since the first attacks 3 weeks ago, but she had demanded time to study the biological material recovered from the Mars colony attack. "This doesn't make any sense," she muttered, pushing away from the microscope. "They're collecting human DNA, but they're modifying it somehow." Her assistant, Dr. Ryan Bell, looked up from his computer. "The latest report from the Valiant just came in. Europa's gone too." Allison closed her eyes briefly. "That's the 4th colony this month. How long until they reach Earth?" "Command estimates 2 weeks, maybe less." The door to the lab slid open and Admiral Paul Hendricks entered. His uniform was crisp as always, but new lines had appeared on his face since the attacks began. "Dr. Wright, do you have anything?" "For me?" he asked. "They're not just killing us, Admiral," Allison said, gesturing to her findings. "They're harvesting biological material, specifically human DNA. But I can't determine why." The Admiral's expression didn't change, but something flashed in his eyes. "I need you to pack up your research. You're being relocated to a secure facility." "I'm not leaving my work," Allison protested. "That's an order, Doctor. When Earth falls, and it will fall, we need people like you to survive." "When it falls," Ryan echoed, his face going pale. Admiral Hendricks looked between them. "I've seen the projections. Our best weapons barely scratch their ships. We're fighting an enemy with technology centuries beyond our own." He lowered his voice. "But we still have one option left." Lieutenant Kate Morgan stood at attention in the United Earth Command war room as world leaders argued around the circular table. Holographic displays showed the advancing Void Fleet, now past Mars and accelerating toward Earth. "We should surrender," shouted the European Federation president. "Attempt communication again." "We've tried," replied General Howard from the North American Alliance. "They don't respond to any signals we send. This isn't a misunderstanding, it's extermination." Kate's eyes drifted to Admiral Hendricks, who sat silently at the far end of the table. Unlike the others, he wasn't arguing. He was waiting. The room shook suddenly, dust falling from the ceiling. The first attacks had begun. "They're ahead of schedule," someone whispered. Admiral Hendricks stood. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. I am now activating Protocol Lazarus under Emergency Power Act Section 12. The room fell silent. "What is Protocol Lazarus?" demanded the African Union representative. "Our last hope," Hendricks replied simply. He turned to Kate. "Lieutenant Morgan, you'll accompany me. The rest of you should get to the emergency bunkers." As they hurried down a restricted corridor, Kate finally spoke. "Sir, I'm not cleared for any Protocol Lazarus." "You are now." Hendricks handed her a small metal device. "This contains the activation codes and coordinates for all Lazarus facilities worldwide. If anything happens to me, you must make sure this reaches one of the facilities." "What's in these facilities, sir?" Hendricks stopped at a secure door, placing his palm on the scanner. "For the past 70 years, humanity has been preparing for this day. We've gathered our greatest asset, the one thing that might save us. When technology fails." The door opened to reveal a small unmarked shuttlecraft. "What asset, sir?" Kate asked as they boarded. Admiral Hendricks strapped himself in as the ceiling above them opened, revealing the night sky now filled with flashes of battle. "Warriors, Lieutenant, the greatest fighters humanity has ever produced, preserved at the moment of their deaths, ready to fight again when we needed them most." The shuttle lifted off as explosions bloomed across Geneva. Kate clutched the device, watching as the United Earth Command building collapsed under alien fire. "How is that possible?" she asked, voice barely audible over the roar of the engines. "Time technology," Hendricks explained. "Experimental, dangerous, and highly classified. We discovered we could reach through time and extract a person at the exact moment of their death, when their absence from the timeline would cause minimal disruption. We've been doing it for decades, collecting history's greatest fighters." Kate stared at him in disbelief as the shuttle broke through the atmosphere, the curve of Earth visible below them. Fires were visible across the night side of the planet. As void ships descended on major cities, "We're leaving?" she asked in horror. "Temporarily. There's a Lazarus facility on the moon. We need to—" A blast rocked the shuttle, sending it spinning. Warning lights flashed across the controls. "Direct hit," Hendricks said grimly, fighting with the controls. "We're losing power." Kate saw a void ship approaching for another attack. Hendricks pushed a button and a section of the shuttle wall slid open. "Escape pod. Get in," he ordered. "Not without you, sir," Kate protested. "That's an order, Lieutenant. Earth needs those codes more than it needs either of us." Another blast hit the shuttle. Hendricks shoved Kate into the pod and slammed his palm on the launch button. The last thing she saw before the pod sealed was the Admiral turning back toward the controls, even as the void ship lined up its final shot. The escape pod ejected just as the shuttle exploded. Kate watched through the small viewport as debris scattered across space, the Admiral gone. She clutched the device containing humanity's last hope as the pod began its descent toward the burning Earth below. Around her, humanity's greatest civilization was falling, and she alone carried the key to awakening its ancient defenders. 5 years had passed since Earth fell. Kate Morgan crouched behind a rusted car and watched the alien patrol move down what was once a busy street in Denver. The tall, dark figures moved with an eerie grace, their eyeless faces turning slowly from side to side. They carried weapons that looked like they had grown from their arms rather than been made. 3 guards at the main entrance, Kate whispered into her radio. 2 more patrolling the fence line. "Copy that," replied Andy Miller, once a college student and now her best scout. "We've got a way in through the old sewer lines. Meet at point B in 10 minutes. Kate touched the small metal device hanging from her neck. 5 years of hiding, of watching humanity enslaved, of losing friends and hope. But today might change everything. The resistance group was small, only 12 people. Each had their own story of survival, of watching as the void took Earth and turned it into a harvesting ground. They had found each other slowly, learning to trust, to fight back in small ways. But small strikes weren't enough anymore. Kate moved silently through the ruins, staying in shadows. The aliens had cleared most major cities, moving the human population to processing centers. Denver was largely abandoned now, except for the alien facility that had once been a military base. At the meeting point, Kate found the others waiting. Each face showed the same mix of fear and determination. These weren't soldiers. They were teachers, nurses, everyday people who had survived when others didn't. "Listen up," Kate said quietly. "The intel we got from the last raid confirms it. There's a military bunker beneath this facility that wasn't on any public records. If the Lazarus protocol files are correct, this is one of the sites." "You still believe in this fairy tale?" asked Ray Daniels, the group's oldest member. "Secret warriors frozen in time?" "I was there when Admiral Hendricks activated the protocol," Kate replied firmly. "I saw the files. It's real." "And if it's not?" asked Maria Garcia, checking her stolen alien weapon. "We're risking everything on this." Kate took a deep breath. "Then we'll have died trying something that matters. Better than slowly starving and hiding." No one argued with that. They had all seen too much to value mere survival anymore. The sewers were dark and slick with moisture. They moved in single file, following Andy's lead through the maze of tunnels. Above them, they occasionally heard the heavy footsteps of void patrols. "Here," Andy whispered after 30 minutes. He pointed to a section of wall that looked different from the rest. "According to the old city plans, there should be a maintenance access that leads to the sub-basement of the base." It took them nearly an hour to break through the sealed door. When it finally opened, cool, dry air flowed out. Kate felt her heart rate increase. The air shouldn't be fresh in a sealed tunnel that was decades old. They emerged into a concrete corridor. Emergency lights glowed dimly along the ceiling, powered by some system that had outlasted the fall of humanity. "Life support systems are still active," said Ethan Powell, who had been an engineer before the invasion. "Something's still running down here." They moved cautiously through the underground complex. Signs on the walls carried military codes and warnings. Most doors they passed were locked, but eventually they found a large security door that was partially open. "This is it," Kate whispered, recognizing the symbol from the files, a phoenix rising from ashes. "This is a Lazarus facility." The room beyond was massive, stretching farther than their lights could reach. Row upon row of metal pods filled the space, each connected to a central system by thick cables. A thin layer of frost covered their surface. "They're cryogenic chambers," Ethan said in awe. "Hundreds of them." Kate approached the central control station, her hands shaking slightly. This was what she had been searching for since the escape. Pod crashed in the Rocky Mountains 5 years ago. This was humanity's last hope. The console lit up when she touched it, responding to the device Hendricks had given her. Information scrolled across the screen, names, dates, vital signs. "They're people," Maria whispered, wiping frost from the nearest pod to reveal a glass section. Inside was a man, his face peaceful as if sleeping. "They're really people." "Who are they?" Andy asked, moving between the pods. Kate read from the screen. "Soldiers, fighters, warriors from throughout history, some from recent times, some from centuries ago. All of them were taken at the moment of death and preserved here." "How is that possible?" Ray asked. "Time extraction technology," Kate replied. "The files said they discovered it in the 2080s but kept it secret. They used it to save the greatest warriors when they were about to die, preserving them for when humanity would need them most." "Like now," Ethan said quietly. A sudden alarm blared through the facility. Red lights flashed overhead. "They know we're here," Maria said, raising her weapon. "We need to wake them," Kate said urgently. The files mentioned an emergency activation sequence. She worked the console frantically, following the instructions she had memorized years ago. The system asked for confirmation, then for the code Hendricks had given her. When she entered it, a deep hum filled the room. The lights on the pods began to change from red to yellow. "It's starting," Kate said. "The revival process takes time. We need to defend this room until at least some of them wake up." The sounds of fighting reached them from the corridor, the rest of their team engaging the void forces that had discovered their presence. "Which pod will open first?" Andy asked, taking position by the door. Kate checked the console. "Pod 42. Subject's name is John Murphy, Special Forces operator who died in combat in 2031. A soldier from our time," Ray said, taking position behind an equipment rack. "Not sure how much help one man will be against an alien army." The pod in question was starting to emit steam as the freezing process reversed. The team formed a defensive perimeter, preparing for the void troops that would soon breach the room. "How long until he wakes up?" Maria asked. "Minutes," Kate replied, drawing her own weapon. "Let's hope he's everything the files promised." The door to the chamber burst open. 3 void soldiers entered, their weapons raised. Maria and Andy fired immediately, catching one of the aliens, but the other 2 spread out, seeking cover. As the firefight intensified, Kate glanced at Pod 42. The frost had cleared from the viewing glass. Inside, the man's eyes were open. He was looking around, taking in his surroundings with remarkable alertness for someone who had been frozen for decades. The pod door began to open with a hydraulic hiss. "Cover me!" Kate shouted, running in a crouch toward the pod. John Murphy sat up slowly as the pod fully opened. He was muscular but not bulky, with close-cropped hair and eyes that assessed the situation with immediate clarity. When he spoke, his voice was rough from disuse but steady. "Where am I?" he asked. "And why are there aliens shooting at us?" "Earth has fallen," Kate said quickly, ducking as alien fire hit nearby. "You're part of Protocol Lazarus, humanity's last hope." Something changed in his expression. Recognition, then grim determination. Without another word, he swung his legs out of the pod and stood. "Weapon?" he asked simply. Kate handed him her sidearm. "Do you remember dying?" John checked the gun with practiced movements. "Afghanistan. My team was surrounded." He looked at her with absolute focus. "I thought I was gone. Guess I've got a second chance." Before Kate could respond, he moved with startling speed toward the battle. His movements were fluid, precise, nothing wasted. He fired 3 shots. 3 Void soldiers fell. The resistance fighters stared in shock. No one had ever seen anyone take down Void troops so efficiently. "Start waking the others," John called back to them. "We've got work to do." The bunker was quiet now. 3 days had passed since they had found the Lazarus facility. 3 days since John Murphy had awakened and helped them defeat the Void Patrol. The aliens had not returned yet, but everyone knew they would. The Void never gave up once they found humans. Kate sat at the control center, studying the files on the warriors inside the pods. There were over 200 of them in this facility alone. According to the data, there were 5 more facilities scattered around the world, each with different warriors from different times and places. John walked up behind her. He had adapted quickly to his new reality. Too quickly, Kate sometimes thought. "How many more can we wake up safely?" he asked. "The system says we can handle about 5 more with current power levels," Kate replied. "After that, we'll need to get the backup generators online." John nodded. "I've reviewed the files. I think I know which ones we should wake next." He reached past her and typed on the keyboard. The screen showed 3 profiles. Grace Coleman, Air Force pilot, technically died in 2057 during the first Mars conflict, John explained. Her flight skills were legendary. Frank Delgado, Marine Corps, died in 2043 in the South China Sea. He specialized in guerrilla tactics. And this one, Natalie Reeves, professional fighter who died in 2024. She wasn't military, but according to her file, she was one of the most skilled hand-to-hand combatants ever studied. Kate looked up at him. "Why these 3? We need different skills. Grace for anything involving aircraft, Frank for ground strategy, and Natalie because the Void seemed to rely heavily on their weapons. If we can get close enough, someone with her skills could be deadly." Kate nodded slowly. "Wake them." The revival process took hours. The Resistance members took turns watching the door while others helped prepare the awakening warriors. Dr. Ben Cooper, a former emergency room doctor who had joined the Resistance 6 months ago, monitored their vital signs. "It's amazing," Ben said quietly as they watched the pods open. "They're perfectly preserved. No cell degradation, no neural damage. It's like they just closed their eyes in their time and opened them in ours." Grace Coleman was the first to fully awaken. She was tall and lean, with short gray hair that suggested she had been in her 50s when she died. Her eyes scanned the room with military precision. "Status report," she demanded immediately. Kate stepped forward. "Colonel Coleman, I'm Lieutenant Kate Morgan. The year is 2162. Earth has been invaded and occupied by an alien force we call the Void. You were preserved as part of Protocol Lazarus." Grace was silent for a long moment. "I remember my ship exploding. Mars orbit. There was no way out." She looked at her hands. "This is really happening, isn't it?" "Yes, ma'am," John said, stepping forward. "I'm John Murphy, Special Forces. I died in 2031, was revived 3 days ago." A hint of a smile touched Grace's lips. "Well, Lieutenant Murphy, seems we've got a lot of catching up to do." Frank Delgado woke up swinging. It took John and 2 others to hold him down until he realized he wasn't in danger. He was a stocky man with scars across his arms and face. When he finally calmed down, he listened to their explanation in silence. "So we're humanity's last hope," he said finally. "No pressure there." Natalie Reeves was the most surprising. She was younger than the others, maybe 30, with an athlete's build. Unlike the military personnel, she had no experience with war or battles beyond competition. But when she understood what was happening, she simply nodded. "I always said I'd fight till my last breath," she said. "Guess I get a few more breaths now." By evening, all 3 warriors were up and moving around. Ben insisted they take it slow, but none of them seemed interested in rest. There was too much to learn, too much to understand about the world they had awakened to. Kate gathered everyone in what had become their command center. The Resistance members watched the historical warriors with a mix of hope and uncertainty. "We need to talk about next steps," Kate said. "The Void will send more forces once they realize their patrol is missing. And there are other facilities. We need to find before they do. Let me get this straight, Frank said, leaning forward. These aliens showed up, kicked humanity's ass with superior tech, and now we're supposed to turn the tide with a handful of fighters from the past? Yes, John replied simply, because we have something they don't expect. And what's that? Frank asked. Unpredictability. Different fighting styles from across human history. They've studied modern military tactics, but they've never seen how someone from your era fights, or mine, or Natalie's. Natalie, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke up. It's like fighting a new opponent. If they've only studied one style, they won't be ready for something completely different. Grace nodded slowly. It could work. In my time, we found that changing tactics unexpectedly was one of the few ways to gain advantage against superior technology. There's more, Kate said. She pulled up a map on the main screen. These are the other Lazarus facilities: Europe, Asia, Africa, South America, and Australia. Each contains warriors from different backgrounds and times. We need to reach them before the void does, John said. We'll need to split up. Split up? Andy, one of the resistance members, asked in alarm. We just found you. You're our only advantage. And we need more advantages, Grace said firmly. That means more warriors. The discussion continued late into the night. Plans were made, teams formed. Kate would stay with John and Frank to secure the Denver facility and awaken more warriors. Natalie would go with Grace and a small team to find the European facility, hidden somewhere in the mountains of what was once France. As the meeting broke up, Kate found John standing alone, studying the profile of another warrior still in cryosleep. Second thoughts? She asked. John shook his head. Just thinking about how strange this is. In my time, I died saving my team. I made peace with that. Now I'm here, fighting aliens alongside people who died decades after me. Do you wish I had stayed dead? Kate asked softly. No, John said without hesitation. Every soldier hopes their sacrifice means something. This is a second chance to make sure it does. A sudden alarm blared through the facility. Andy rushed in, his face pale. Void ships, he said. At least 3 of them, landing outside the city. How much time do we have? John asked, immediately alert. Hours, maybe less. John turned to Kate. We need to speed up our plans. Wake up as many warriors as we can, get the teams ready to move out tonight. Kate nodded. This facility has armory levels below us. If the weapons are still there, they will be, Grace said, joining them. Lazarus, facilities were designed to be self-contained. There will be weapons, supplies, maybe even vehicles. I'll check, Frank volunteered, already moving toward the door. Natalie approached, her face serious. I've been studying the data on these void aliens, their physical structure, the way they move. I think I might know some weaknesses in their design. John looked at her with new respect. Share what you found. Every advantage helps. As the group dispersed to prepare, Kate felt something she hadn't experienced in 5 years. It wasn't just hope, it was the beginning of belief. Belief that humanity might actually have a chance. Outside, the alien ships descended through the night sky, their dark shapes blotting out the stars. Inside the bunker, Earth's lost warriors prepared for battle once more. 6 months had passed since the warriors first awoke. 6 months of fighting, planning, and watching their small victories add up to something larger. The resistance was no longer just surviving, they were fighting back. John stood on a ridge, overlooking what had once been a void processing center near the ruins of Seattle. Now it was a smoking wreck. His team moved efficiently through the destruction, gathering alien weapons and technology. Just like we planned, Frank said, joining him on the ridge. They never saw us coming. John nodded. In the months since they had escaped the Denver facility, just ahead of the Void forces, they had refined their tactics. Frank's guerrilla warfare experience had proven invaluable. The aliens expected direct assaults. They didn't understand hidden strikes, traps, or ambushes. Any word from the other teams? John asked. Frank checked his communication device, a mix of salvaged human and void technology that Dr. Ben had created. Grace and her air team just took down a void transport over Montana. Natalie's group successfully reached the European facility last week. John smiled slightly. The plan was working. After escaping Denver with as many awakened warriors as possible, they had split into specialized teams. Each team focused on what they did best, led by warriors from different eras. And Kate? John asked. Their original group had been separated during the escape from Denver, still heading for the Australian facility with her team. No contact in 3 days, but that's expected given the distance. A sudden explosion in the valley below caught their attention. A human soldier, one of the newly awakened warriors from the 2070s, had used an old-style grenade launcher against a hidden void patrol. They still don't understand our weapons, Frank noted. Their shields are designed for energy weapons, not physical projectiles. Another advantage, John agreed. Let's get our people and move out before reinforcements arrive. As they descended into the valley, John reflected on how much had changed. The first few weeks after Denver had been desperate, running, hiding, barely staying ahead of the void forces. But as they awakened more warriors from the Lazarus facilities, their strength grew. More importantly, the myths began to spread. Humans in the processing camps heard whispers about fighters from the past, returning to save humanity. Hope was returning to a world that had been hopeless for 5 years. Back at their current base, an abandoned mining complex in the mountains, dozens of warriors from throughout human history worked alongside resistance members. Some trained, together, teaching each other their fighting styles. Others worked on weapons and equipment. The air was filled with purpose. "John, we need you in the command center," called a voice over the radio. It was Ben Cooper, now their chief of intelligence and research. In the command center, a large underground room filled with salvaged equipment, Ben was studying data on multiple screens. Grace Coleman stood nearby, her face serious. "What is it?" John asked. "We've been analyzing the communication signals we intercepted from the Seattle facility," Ben explained. "The Void are changing their patterns. They're gathering." "For what?" Frank asked as he entered. Grace pointed to a map. "They're concentrating forces in these 5 locations around the globe. Each one corresponds to a major human population center they've been using for processing. They're expecting an attack," John said, studying the map. "Or preparing one," Grace countered. "I think they're finally starting to see us as a threat." Ben touched a control, and a new image appeared on the main screen. It showed a massive void ship, much larger than any they had seen before. "This appeared in orbit 3 days ago," Ben said. "It's not like their other vessels. This is something new." The room fell silent as they studied the image. The ship was at least 10 times the size of the largest void vessels they had previously encountered. "A command ship?" John suggested. "Maybe," Ben replied. "But why now? What's changed?" The door to the command center opened, and a tall figure entered. Everyone straightened automatically. Admiral Paul Hendricks moved slowly to the front of the room, leaning on a cane. His right side showed burn scars from his escape 5 years ago. 3 months earlier, Kate's team had found him hiding with a small group of survivors in the Rocky Mountains. His survival had electrified the resistance. "What's changed?" the Admiral said, "is that we're winning. Small victories, but they're adding up. For the first time since the invasion, the Void are facing an enemy they don't understand." He gestured to the gathered warriors, men and women from different times, with different skills and experiences. "Look at yourselves. A special forces operator from the 2030s, a pilot from the 2050s, soldiers from conflicts spanning a century. Each of you fights differently. Each of you thinks differently. The Void can't predict you because you don't fight like modern humans." "So, what's our next move?" Frank asked. The Admiral moved to the map. "We've received a transmission from Natalie's team in Europe. They've successfully awakened the warriors in the French facility. Among them is someone who might change everything. A scientist who worked on the original Void contact mission before the invasion." This was news to everyone in the room. John leaned forward. "The first contact? I thought the Void just appeared and attacked." "That's the story that was told," Hendricks said. "The truth is more complicated. There was a first contact team. It didn't go well, but they learned things about the Void. Things that might help us now." What things? Grace asked. Their weakness, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Natalie. In the doorway, she looked tired but triumphant. Behind her stood an older man with wild white hair and intelligent eyes. Everyone, this is Dr. Alan Weber, Natalie said. He was part of the first contact team in 2157, just before the invasion. Dr. Weber stepped forward. The Void aren't just aliens, he said without preamble. They're biological machines, created, not born. And like all machines, they have a central processing system. He pointed to the image of the large ship. That's not a command ship, it's a hive mind. It directs all Void forces on Earth. Take it out, and the rest will be disorganized, maybe even non-functional. A murmur ran through the room. For the first time, they were hearing about a way to defeat the Void completely, not just win small battles. How do we take out something that big? Frank asked. We've barely managed to damage their smaller ships. Dr. Weber smiled thinly. Before I died, I was working on a virus. Not biological, but a code that could infect their communication systems. With what I've learned from Dr. Cooper about your discoveries over the past months, I believe I can complete it. A virus wouldn't be enough, Grace said. We'd need to get it into their central systems. That means boarding that ship. Impossible, someone muttered. John looked around the room, at the faces of people who had already done the impossible. They had returned, from death itself to fight for humanity. No, he said firmly, not impossible, just the hardest mission yet. The Admiral nodded slowly. This is what Lazarus was created for. The final stand. We'll need all the warriors, Frank said. Every facility, every fighter we can wake up. And a plan unlike anything the Void have. Ever seen? Added Natalie. For the next several hours they worked on that plan. Warriors from different eras contributed tactics from their times. The ground assault would use Frank's guerrilla techniques. The approach to the Void ships would use stealth methods Grace had perfected during the Mars conflict. The boarding team would apply Natalie's close combat expertise. As night fell, John found himself outside, looking up at the stars. Somewhere up there was the Void mothership, and their best chance to free Earth. Thinking about tomorrow? Natalie asked, joining him. John nodded. Thinking about the odds? Bad? Always are, he said with a small smile. But I've faced bad odds before. We all have, Natalie replied. That's why we're here. We're the ones who fight anyway. In the distance they could see lights moving. More warriors and resistance fighters arriving from hidden bases across the continent. Tomorrow, they would begin the largest coordinated attack since the fall of Earth. John took a deep breath of the cool night air. One more battle, he said quietly. One more chance to make a difference. Natalie nodded. That's all any warrior ever gets. The battle began at dawn. Across the world, resistance forces attacked Void processing centers simultaneously. It was the largest coordinated human offensive since the fall of Earth. The goal wasn't just to damage the alien facilities, it was to draw attention away from the real mission. High above the Nevada desert, Grace Coleman piloted a captured Void transport ship. Inside were John, Natalie, Dr. Weber, and 20 of their best fighters, warriors from different times united by a single purpose. Approaching the upper atmosphere, Grace reported. All systems functioning normally. They still think we're one of theirs. John checked his weapon one last time. It was an old-style rifle modified by Frank's team to fire projectiles that could penetrate Void armor. Around him, the strike team did the same. Each carried weapons from their own eras, things the Void had never encountered and couldn't predict. 5 minutes to contact with the mothership, Grace called from the cockpit. Their docking bay is opening for us. Dr. Weber sat nearby, his fingers moving rapidly over a small device. The virus is ready, he said quietly. We just need to reach their central processor. Natalie moved to the viewport and looked up at the massive ship growing larger above them. It's bigger than I imagined, she said. The bigger they are, John replied with a small smile. The harder they fall, Natalie finished, returning the smile. The transport ship slipped smoothly into the docking bay of the enormous void vessel. For a moment, everything was quiet. "They're scanning us," Grace warned. "Get ready." The first part of their plan worked perfectly. When void soldiers approached to inspect the transport, the warriors burst out in a coordinated attack. Natalie moved like water, flowing between three aliens before they could raise their weapons. John and his team spread out in perfect formation, covering the hangar with overlapping fields of fire. "Move to Phase 2, John ordered once the hangar was secure. "Grace, seal the doors, strike teams form up." They split into 3 groups. Grace would lead a team to the ship's engine room to plant explosives as a backup plan. Natalie would take a second team to create diversions throughout the ship. John, Dr. Weber, and 5 others would head for the central processor. "Remember, we have 20 minutes before they realize something is wrong and lock down the ship," John reminded them. "Move fast, stay quiet when possible." The corridors of the void ship were dark and strangely organic, more like veins than hallways. They moved quickly, following the map Dr. Weber had created based on data from previous missions. "Something's wrong," Dr. Weber said suddenly, checking his scanner. "They're not responding the way they should. It's like they know we're—" An alarm blared through the ship. Red lights flashed along the walls. "They know," John said grimly. "Move faster." They ran through the corridors, no longer concerned with stealth. Void soldiers appeared ahead, weapons raised. John's team engaged them, using fighting styles and weapons the aliens had never seen before. A warrior from the 2090s used a sound-based weapon that disoriented the void. Another, from the 2040s water wars, employed underwater fighting techniques that confused the aliens' prediction systems. But there were many void, and the element of surprise could only take them so far. One by one, the warriors fell. Some were wounded, others killed. Truly dead this time, with no technology to save them. "We're not going to make it," Dr. Weber gasped as they took cover behind a fallen void structure. Only John, Natalie, and 3 others remained with the doctor now. "Yes, we are," John said firmly. "Grace, status report." "Explosives planted." Grace's voice came through their comms. "We've taken heavy losses, 2 minutes until detonation." "Get your team out," John ordered. "We'll meet you at the extraction point." "John." Grace's voice was tight with emotion. "The way back is cut off. We're surrounded." A moment of silence fell over the team. John closed his eyes briefly. "Understood. Complete your mission, Colonel." "It's been an honor," Grace replied. "Give them hell." The ship shuddered a few minutes later as explosions ripped through the engine section. Warning lights flashed more, urgently. "That's our cue," Natalie said, rising to her feet. "Let's finish this." They fought their way forward, each corridor bringing more resistance. 2 more warriors fell before they reached a massive doorway. "The central processor chamber," Dr. Weber said, working to bypass the security system. "The heart of the hive, mind." The door slid open to reveal a cavernous room. In the center stood a towering structure that pulsed with blue light. Tubes and cables extended from it in all directions, connecting to the walls and ceiling. "There," Dr. Weber pointed. "That's where we need to upload the virus." Void guards swarmed into the chamber from side entrances. John and Natalie moved to intercept them, fighting back to back. "Get to the processor," John shouted to Dr. Weber. "We'll cover you." The old scientist nodded and ran forward, dodging alien fire. John and Natalie fought desperately, using every skill and trick they had learned across centuries of human warfare. A void blast caught Natalie in the shoulder, spinning her around. She fell to one knee but continued fighting, taking down 2 more aliens before rising again. "Just like my last match," she said with a pained smile. "Except the stakes are higher." John felt a sharp pain as a void weapon grazed his side. He ignored it, focusing on the mission. Dr. Weber had reached the central processor and was connecting his device to it. More void soldiers entered the chamber. Too many. John knew they couldn't hold them off much longer. "Weber, status?" he called. "Almost there," the scientist replied. "The virus is uploading, but it's slower than expected. I need more time." John looked at Natalie. They both understood what needed to be done. "Go help him," Natalie said. "I'll hold them here." "Natalie, this is what we do, right?" she said, her eyes fierce. "We fight until our last breath. Now, I get to do it twice." John nodded once, then moved to Weber's position while Natalie held the entrance. Her fighting style was unlike anything the Void had seen, a perfect blend of ancient techniques and modern power that kept the aliens off balance. "How much longer?" John asked, joining Weber at the processor. 2 minutes to complete upload," Weber replied. "But the system is fighting back. I need to stay here to make sure it completes." John looked back at Natalie. She was still fighting, but she was surrounded now, taking hits but refusing to fall. "Get out of here, John," Weber said suddenly. "Someone needs to make sure humanity knows what happened. I can finish this." John hesitated. Then a voice came through his comm. "John, this is Admiral Hendricks. Our sensors show massive disruption in Void forces worldwide. Whatever you're doing up there is working. Their ground troops are disorganized, confused." "It's not complete yet, sir," John replied. "We're still uploading the virus." "Then finish it, soldier," Hendricks ordered. "That's what you were saved for." John made his decision. "Weber, go. I'll finish the upload." The scientist looked at him in surprise. "You don't know how. Show me. Quickly." Weber gave him a brief explanation, then hesitated. "John, this means—" "I know what it means," John said. "Now go, get Natalie out if you can." As Weber moved away, John turned back to the processor. This was what he had been saved for. One final mission, one last chance to make a difference. Just like Afghanistan, all those years ago, when he had saved his team by staying behind. The ship shuddered again as more explosions tore through it. The Void around him seemed to move more slowly, less coordinated. The virus was already affecting them. John watched the upload progress. 85%. 90%. He thought about the strange journey that had brought him here. Death, resurrection, and now a second chance to save not just his team, but all of humanity. Percent. Void soldiers broke through Natalie's defense. She fell, but Weber dragged her toward an escape route. 8%. More Void approached John, but they moved erratically, their coordination failing. 100%. Upload complete. A wave of energy pulsed through the chamber. The Void soldiers froze in place, then collapsed. Throughout the ship, throughout the world, the same thing was happening. The connection was broken. The hive mind was infected. John felt the ship beginning to break apart around him. He closed his eyes, thinking of Kate, of Frank, of all the warriors who had fought alongside him. They had done it. Humanity would survive. As the ship exploded in orbit, the light was visible across half the world. People emerged from hiding places, from processing centers suddenly unguarded, and looked up at the sky in wonder. Kate Morgan stood on a hillside watching the light fade. Beside her, Frank Delgado removed his hat. Did they make it? Someone asked. Kate thought of John, of Natalie, of Grace, of all those who had gone to the mothership. She thought of the warriors throughout history who had been given a second chance to fight for humanity. They had used that chance well. Some of them did, she said softly. Enough of them. In the days that followed, Void forces across the planet fell into disarray. Without the hive mind to direct them, they were easily defeated by the remaining warriors and the growing human resistance. In the command center, Admiral Hendricks stood before a group of newly freed humans and the remaining historical warriors. Today we begin rebuilding, he announced, and we do so with a new understanding of who we are. We are not just the humans of the present. We are the sum of our entire history. Every fighter, every warrior, every person who stood against impossible odds. He gestured to the warriors around him. Pew.